starting my career in Hollywood, and you just take every job you can. And I got a call one film earlier. I was line producing low budget features, and I was directing second unit on them and DPing. You know how you do everything on those. And he said, hey, do you want to do one department on a big Hollywood film? So I went on board a film called Daryl, and I ended up being like what you would call now the visual effects producer. And then that visual effects supervisor went on to do Running Man, and he called me and said, hey, do you want to work with me again on Running Man? So I was like, oh, cool, Arnold Schwarzenegger, this is going to be great. So I went in, and we were working together, and then eventually he left the project. And he's a visual effects supervisor of great renown, won an Oscar, Michael Fink is his name, and he left to do something else. And so they turned around to me, the producers, and said, hey, you've been here for a few weeks, you seem to know all about what you're doing, so why don't you be the visual effects supervisor? So, of course, I said, yeah, and so that was my first visual effects supervising job.
What's the #1 television show in the whole wide world? Yes!
Yes, it's called Running Man. 400 square blocks.
We were in pre-production, and Andy Davis was the director, who was a creative force, like a ball of energy, wonderful person. And so Andy had tons of ideas, and we were going to do amazing creative stuff, and there was a thing called the Fairlight computer that had just come out, and he was fascinated by that. I was showing him all this stuff it could do for futuristic television and how to do thermography, because we wanted to be able to track the fugitives and all sorts of cool things. So as they moved along, I guess I wasn't there for the insider stuff, but Andy had a divergence creatively with the producers. And we shot like the first week, and boom, we got told Andy was leaving and a new director was coming on. So it was literally like a Friday, and we were told Paul Michael Glaser was going to come on and start on Monday or something like that. It was like we'd never met him. We didn't know anything what his vision was going to be. It was a crazy change, and we were really sad because we loved Andy. And where was this going to go? So Paul came on, and I was stunned that the ship kept moving. It was like, obviously the first few days he was pretty much directing traffic. I mean, it was like we had rehearsed, we kind of knew where we were going. And so we survived it, and he survived it, and we went all the way through. And you never know. I mean, Paul was very good at what he did, and Andy was great at what he did. What you never will know is what would have Andy's film been like versus Paul's film. I don't know. I mean, there was certain creative stuff that we didn't do that Andy had come up with. I think it would have been a more wild-looking film or something like that. It's hard to say. But performance-wise, would it have been different? Of course, it would have been different. So I've always kind of had in my mind, like, what would that film have been? But nevertheless, the film that we did make was bound by the script. The script didn't change because we changed directors. And the script was it, and that was a wild, wild script. I mean, the journey we went on was really something else.
Now, where should we go? Maybe someplace warm. I need to work on my tan anyway. You see, you get so pale in prison.
There you are.
Good.
In Running Man, the visual effects were a little different than they are today. Back in those days, you had to have everything locked off. Like if you wanted a big matte painting, you did your shot, and everything was locked off and tied down, and then we'd paint in a city in the background, or we'd paint something on the billboard, and there couldn't be any movement because a lot of it was done analog in those days, on film, with actual people painting on glass and double exposing it into the negative. And so my job really was, it was really like just about one of the last films that was still pretty much analog. And so I had to be there on the shoot to supervise. We did blue screen stuff like in the helicopter when he's having the big fight in the helicopter. I mean, I was there pretty much shooting that. And we had Arnold hanging out of the helicopter and blue screen down below. And So there was blue screen stuff, there was matte paintings, and there was a lot of electricity, like that. The one character that shot electric bolts, all that had to be hand animated. And I remember one of our animators turned out later to start a little company called lynda.com. So, we had a lot of really super talented people on this film. And I didn't even really know everything I was going to do when I started. It grew and grew. We had lots of 24-frame playback on the monitors. There was huge control room sets where they were monitoring everything. We had to create 3D graphics in a historic way. So like we would take we got Arnold Schwarzenegger to come into a studio, and we put him on a bar stool, and we marked off 365 points on this circling bar stool with an arrow, and he sat there for an hour. We were all telling stories and having a good time, and we'd move it and click, take a picture, move it. So I still have all these pictures, 360 degrees of Arnold, and then we put them together in the computer and created a futuristic wanted poster. And we thought it was like the coolest thing in the world. And we did 3D terrain mapping. Like back in those days, the military had these, at GE, these terrain maps that you could do, flyovers. Like now it'd be nothing. It's like Google Earth, 3D, everything. But back in those days, it was a unique thing that only certain high-tech military computer facilities had. I had a security clearance on a movie called Project X, so I kind of knew about it because I went down to Florida and was in their facility, and I saw a lot of these, they were for simulations. So I thought, cool, well, maybe we could do that in Running Man. So we actually made up 3D flyovers, not doing them in 3D, but doing them in 2D to look like 3D. So we did tons of stuff that was pretty cutting edge, although when I look back now, it would take about 10 seconds to do those things that took like weeks and hours. Back in those days.
Look at that mother move, huh? Is he beautiful? Who is he?
Are you kidding? That's Ben Richards.
The cop from The Massacre. Sensational. Perfect contestant. I want him.
We did surveillance videos. We did stuff where he walks up to an apartment complex and looks in the security camera. We shot all that. So we had Arnold on our location. How that all came about was a lot of extra stuff had to be shot, and it could be shot on video for the movie because it was going to appear on video. It was actually going to be easier to source it on video. So I had been producing stuff for low-budget movies through my own company for quite a while. So I thought, wow, this would be fun. This would be great. I'm going to go to the producer. So I went to them. I said, hey, how about if I make all these videos through my company? You write my company a check, and then I'll go make the videos and deliver them to you, sell them back to you. That way you can save money, and I can have a good time doing it, and it'll be really fun for everybody. So that's what we did. So all those videos, we rented stage space, we hired actors, we had the Laker Girls, we had Jesse Ventura, we had Arnold, we had, you name it, we had cranes, we had painted sets, we did locations, we got the permits, we did everything. And we did some escape stuff where Arnold runs through terrain for a video, and we did him doing some surveillance stuff. So we had it all locked down, a schedule. And so that's how that stuff got in the movie. What I didn't know, again, because of the whole thing, I was so green, I never made a contract. I never asked for Directors Guild or anything like that. I just did it, and they paid me. I didn't mark anything up. I didn't make a profit. It was just a straight pass-through, and I got to do it, and I figured I'd get credit for it. I didn't really get credit for it, and I got the experience, okay, and it was really fun to do. We had a blast, but I was so green in those days that I had no idea that I probably could have bought a house with what I should have gotten for doing all that. But anyway.
Why, I drink Cadre Cola. It hits the spot.
Some of the sequences in Running Man are absolutely incredible. Like, we shot out at the Fontana steel mills that were taken down. That was the most toxic, nasty place on this planet. I mean, I can't even imagine the health considerations for having worked there. But that's where we did the prison escape scene, where he runs out and his head gets blown off, and there's some epic car chases and crashes, and that was the extent that we went in those days for those kind of films, like massive, real. We brought in a theatrical lighting person. Like, I had done a TV show for Polygram Television, and I hired a TV lighting person to do it, named Mark Brickman. And so one of my other contributions to this was, when I was originally working with Andy Davis, was we should not do film lighting for the TV part of it. When it turns into an episode and a chase and, you know, the contestants going at each other, actual theatrical lighting should come up. So we had an entire TV lighting team. They did hire my friend Mark Brickman, and he came out. So he had lighting boards and circuits as though it was a Broadway show. So we had two types of lighting, film lighting and theatrical lighting, which was kind of a first for films too. And it really worked great. So we had lights on big bars with spinning lights and all the tricky things that theatrical lighting could do then that film lighting really didn't at the time, moving on motors and panning and tilting and spotlights and this and that. So it was pretty cool how that, if you go look back at the film, you should notice that there are two lighting teams involved and two whole ways of doing it.
It's showtime!
The game show set, to be on it, it was massive. It was really cool. We really did have the Laker
tráilers.
Girls, which were
Visita
a
mi
huge
canal.
phenomenon at the time. Paula Abdul was the choreographer. They were super fun, and they were also amazing dancers. And that set was stupendous. And Richard Dawson couldn't have been more perfect as the character, because that's his character. But he really had that extra little thing where he could be evil, which is a little different from his real role on daytime television. So he's a super nice guy, too. Fun to work with.
We have one hell of a show for you tonight. Phil, please, if you will, introduce tonight's guest runner.
Arnold and the rest of the cast were really a great bunch of people. They were really friendly. And I brought my parents to the set. You know, my father was mayor of a town in New Jersey. They grew up in New Jersey, never been in the film world. So I bring them to the set, and we were having dinner, and there's Arnold, and I thought, well, I'll go over and say hi. So I go over and I introduce my parents to Arnold. You know, I'm not like the main person on this movie. I wasn't like the director. I was an important part of it, but he was so super gracious. He was like, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Grassmere, how are you? Oh, yeah, Robert's the greatest. And he was so nice. He made my parents feel like $1 million. And then he said, you got to be in the scene. So the scene where they release the contestants up this ramp with thousands of people and everything, my parents are in that scene. They're cheering on the contestants. It was amazing. So my parents had a story to go back to Maplewood, New Jersey with because of Arnold, you know? That's what he was like. Another really funny story with Arnold was how we were in this subterranean basement. You know, we had Mick Fleetwood in the movie, you know, of Fleetwood Mac. So the rebels occupied this place, and we did this long Steadicam shot. It was super hard to do. We had tons of video playback. We had all these things that had to be perfect. And it was take after take, and it wasn't going right. And I had like a huge team of video playback operators that had to, you know, turn on this thing and that thing at that moment. Steadicam had to arrive, and then Arnold gets there, and tensions were getting high, and Paul Michael Glaser was getting upset, and we finally did a great take. We're watching the monitors and the take is perfect. It's like, oh, yes, yes, everybody got it right. And at the end, Arnold was supposed to light a cigar, with a match. And so the first perfect take of the night, he pulls out a lighter that was like this big that he had hidden in his coat as a joke. And he pops it open and it's like everyone starts laughing. That take was ruined, the first good take of the night. But Arnold could get away with that. I mean, if it had been someone else making a joke or ruining the take, it wouldn't have worked. But he broke the tension, and even though the take was good to that point, we did it again, we got it right, but he was funny,
Nothing worth losing your head over there, huh?
You got it.
Arnold features high in my movie star thing. People say, which movie stars have you worked with that you really like? And I was like, well, I like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's really a great guy. And I know he's got a checkered past and everything, but I just think he's a solid person. He's super nice. He's the kind of guy, he says hello to people as you walk in an office. I've been with plenty of other stars. They storm in, go right to the producer's suite. Arnold stops in the front room, says, good morning, how are you, And one time we had finished Running Man, and I was up in Aspen skiing for the week with my friends who were all ski bums up in Aspen. And I don't really talk about what I do for my job when I'm with my old friends. So we're sitting in this bar right in the corner window, and I look at the window, and there's Arnold, because he used to ski in Aspen with his wife, Maria. And I knew Maria really well, too, from Running Man. She used to come, and I would always escort her when she came to the set. So Arnold's walking down the sidewalk, and I said, oh, excuse me, guys, there's Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm going to go say hi. And they go, Robert, no, this is Aspen, man. We don't do that to movie stars. Like, leave him alone. And they didn't even know I, knew him. So I said, no, I got to go talk to him. So I run outside. It was like 20 below zero. And I had just a scarf, and I just had my regular shirt on. I didn't bring my jacket. And I run down the street. He's walking. He gets right up to the windows where my friends were. So they're sitting they're like 3 feet away. When I caught him, and he turns around, and he goes, Robert! And I go, Arnold! And I give him a big hug, and then we're sitting there chatting, and I'm looking at my friends going, and I'm going, see, and it was just one of the great moments where it couldn't have happened in a more perfect place. And then Arnold does the best thing. He says, why'd you come out without your jacket on? And he says, it's freezing out here. He's got a big puffy park on. So he takes my scarf, and he ties it and tightens it around my neck, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so then I look over at my friends, and they're like, oh, my God, we can't believe this. And then so I said goodbye and went back in. And I didn't say a word when I went back in. I just went and sat down and took my drink. And they're like, what was that all about?
I'm warning you, I get sick. Air sick, car sick. I'm gonna throw up all over you.
Go ahead. Won't show on this shirt.
We had an incredible time making the film, and it truly remains to this day one of my all-time unbelievable experiences. This was a big movie for the time. I mean, I don't know what the budget was, but it would have to be the equivalent of doing a $200 or $300 million movie now. And we totally expected this was going to be massive in the box office, because as you got going, it was a whole world we were creating. Films didn't really do that much of that on such a realistic level.